Hi my beautiful blue babes, welcome back to my channel. Alright, so today I have part 2 of the art tips for art shows and stuff. Again, summer's coming up and I'm really hoping that art shows do start to open back up with a safe way, of course, for us to shop and support your local artist. If you guys are somebody who doesn't do art but has enjoyed going to art shows, or if you're somebody who has never been to one, make sure to look into see what you guys or what your county or your state might be doing locally. It's really important to support your artists, especially local ones, so make sure you look into that. It's also a really fun way to find unique gifts and to shop around during the summer. It doesn't have to be art pieces. There's a ton of things that people make, from jewelry to, you know, actual everyday stuff like plates and pots, depending on the type of artist. Like, there's a ton of stuff, so just make sure you look into that and support your local artist in some way. I'm sure any little purchase is very, you know, grateful and helps a lot. But yeah, like I said, we're going to get into the next 5 tips that could potentially help you if you are an artist and you're someone who does art shows. Alright, so my first tip for today is your booth setup. You want to make sure that it is eye-catching. Depending on where you're placed in a show, you might not always have the best spots. So something that catches people's attention, you know, from far away, I think it's very important. I think it's really not only fun, but I think it's just, you know, also important to have kind of your own aesthetic and feel to your booth setup. So for instance, I use a lot of wooden crates when I set up my art pieces. I love the feel it gives. I think it's has its own kind of artsy feel, and they're actually really useful for standing up canvases and different types of things, and it just makes for a really fun type of environment. So something that of course is easy for people to look through, because you know we're in the time that we are, like in other art shows, if you're a painter or a photographer and you sell prints, people might be flipping through your prints and things like that. Obviously you can have hand sanitizer available, but it might be easier for you to have ways where they can just look at it without having to touch it. So just finding different things like that is really helpful. My type of painting and stuff, you know, when I have all my paintings hung up and I have things out, I didn't necessarily have people flipping through stuff. I never liked that type of setup in the first place. I feel like when people see it, that's when they come in. It's very colorful, kind of in your face type thing, because I have so many different paintings from different sizes, different colors, even though I use blue a lot, but when everything's kind of up and you can see it, it's really like, whoa, let me go over there and look at that, like that looks cool type of thing. So it's good to be seen from far away. So if you do have larger pieces, if you are somebody who does things like jewelry and you necessarily can't see it from far away, maybe put up, like, you know, make sure you have some type of poster with your name on it, things that you sell, and just kind of be creative on ways that you can grab people's attention. So my second tip for you guys is to be patient and expect delays and be willing to adjust quickly. With art shows, there's always, you know, there could be people either coming in or going at last minute. There could be last minute changes, sometimes due to weather, or again due to maybe somebody didn't show up, so we're moving booths around so everything kind of looks even and equal. There can be changes a lot, and especially if it's your first one, please don't freak out. Don't, you know, let that cause stress. It's a natural thing. It happens. I mean, you know, you can't help it. So I would just encourage you to kind of expect those things and just be willing to run with it and just, you know, be nonchalant. Like, there's no use in stressing yourself out, because art shows in general are already stressful. So if you let something like that that's just out of your control stress you out even more, it's gonna ruin your experience in a whole. So just kind of expect those type of things, be aware that it can happen, and just be willing to kind of move around it, maneuver, and, you know, just go with the flow. My third tip for you guys is going to be network with other artists. If you are, and to be honest, I do encourage you to do shows that are mainly within, not your media per se, but visual arts. Sometimes there's different types of shows and they'll have an art section, but I feel like you don't necessarily sell as much. It depends on the show, but do your research because people might not be there to necessarily look at art. But if you are at an art show, most of the time there are tons of other artists around you, especially artists who have done this thing before. If this is your first show, the best that you could do for yourself, if you aren't walking out with money and breaking even, is walking out with knowledge and tips for your next show. That was something I had to realize earlier on, is that I'm not always going to break even. I'm not always going to make the money that I thought I would make, but I can always have a positive mindset and take something away from it, whether it wasn't physical money, but it was tips that I can apply to next time. It was maybe connections and friendships, because I talked to the other artists. I asked them, you know, is this something that you did for the first time? Is it something that you would do again? What are some of your favorite art shows? How can I better myself next time? And be aware that not all artists are willing to share that information. A lot of people, which is unfortunate, are kind of in it for themselves, and I guess they feel like, you know, they fought to be where they are, so they don't want to share the information. But I really, really do appreciate the artists who have taken the time to kind of explain to me in detail, because again, this is that type of thing where, yes, you can gather all the information you can about it, but you learn the most when you experience it. And I think it's best to share our experiences, because I think there's a lot of people going through the same thing, and maybe, you know, they're not sure if this is normal, or, you know, if this is how it should be ran or whatever. But just be willing to connect and get out of that like box, you know, don't be scared. You know, most of the time I will say people are friendly, and if not, you know, just brush it off your shoulder. It happens, and that it is what it is. And it's unfortunate, but hey, it's life. So do connect with artists. Make sure you are, of course, sharing information yourself. If anybody has questions, don't be stingy. I really encourage you to just, you know, we need a better, more supporting kind of environment within our art community. So, but that is my third tip for you guys. I think is a very, very important one. And again, if you don't walk out with money, at least walk out with some information, whether it's something you learned on your own or for somebody else, but some type of information, some type of tip to better yourself off next time. All right, so this kind of leads into my fourth tip, which was support other artists, in the sense that when you are at an art show, I think it's I think it's really, really important to support each other. And a way you can easily do that is purchasing something, whether it's small or not, from other artists. I actually have a wall around the corner where I have pictures of things that I collected from art shows that I did of other artists that I personally fell in love with just as much as the customer did. And I did take my time to support them. Obviously, you know, if you don't have the money, that's different. But always, you know, take a card, talk to them. You know, if you actually do like somebody's art, genuinely like their art, tell them that. Like, hearing that from people it's really nice. I'm sure, you know, again, if you're an artist yourself, hearing somebody say they like your art, it's nice to know that there are people out there who like it now. And I know everybody can't necessarily buy it per se, but that verbal kind of communication and being able to buy it if you can, that support I think is very important. And it also builds a bigger community as well. One of my favorite art shows, again, was at a homeschool convention. It's not necessarily an art show, but they did have a pretty big young entrepreneur section. And that's the type of show that it wasn't necessarily meant for art, but those artists did make a decent amount of money depending on what they sold or what the year was, if it was busy or not. You could make a decent amount of money. And that's one where I really, really loved being able to support other artists around me. We were there for about 3 days, I think. We had long days. Sometimes, you know, people made a lot, sometimes they didn't. I know I had those type of days. But, you know, either if I wasn't able to support them, I would take a card, you know, I talked to them, I created friendships. Then I think, you know, I'm still friends with some people from those shows, and it's really nice to have that type of community. So again, be able to support them, be able to connect, just be willing to do that. All right, and my last tip for you guys, again, kind of touches on what I talked already, but I can't stress how important it is to pay attention to the mistakes you make and apply that to your next show. There are so many things, like, you guys can do all the research you want. I hope this is as helpful, and I hope you don't make necessarily the same mistakes as I do, but it's gonna happen. Every show is different, especially if you're in a different type of art. Your setup, your selling, like, everything is gonna be different from the next person. I mean, I hope that you know you have something unique that stands out from somebody else, whether you're in the same type of art or not. You know, that's kind of what catches people's attention, and there's always going to be a mistake that you make. There's always going to be a learning process, so just be able to notice that, be able to take that criticism, whether it's from somebody else or yourself, in a healthy way and apply it to your next show. Don't be discouraged. I'm telling you guys, every time I do a show, there is always something I learn. Always something I learn, and that I can take and apply it to the next show, and that makes it even better. Maybe it doesn't show in sales necessarily, but maybe it shows in the people who show up to my booth. Maybe it shows in, you know, within the show itself, within my connections to other people, with the things I learn. There's always something you could take away from a show and apply it to your next one to make it even better. Don't be discouraged. I'm telling you guys, it is a learning process, and you're really not going to notice that type of growth that you made until a while later when you look back and say, hey, wow, I come like really far from where I started. And I know, I mean, and I'm speaking off of personal experience, but I think that's something that you just have to be aware of and be willing to go through. You have to start somewhere. You do. And it's not always going to be, you know, this amazing show first time. Like, I loved my first show when I did it, but looking back, like, there's so many mistakes and things I had no idea what I was doing. But it's fun to look back on. It's fun to see the growth. So just be willing to grow. Be willing to go through that kind of thing. Alright, so I do hope this video was helpful for you guys. I love sharing my tips and stuff that I've learned personally. Again, I've done quite a few shows over the years. It has been on halt for the last year because of COVID. But I'm hoping some way, somehow, there's some show I could do somewhere. I personally am willing to travel for shows, so if anybody knows of really good ones, let me know. If I'm able to make it, I definitely will make plans to do so. And if you know, I feel like online, obviously they've moved stuff to online, but online, I've never done them online necessarily, not an art show per se. So I don't know how sales would necessarily work with that. I don't know the experience that comes along with that. That's something that I would have to kind of dabble in to be able to give you tips. But if anybody out there has tips for me, I would really love that. If you have any good art shows that are online and you know you can make a decent amount, because I don't know, sometimes it's just not worth paying that fee for what the experience is. And that again just goes into research of the show. So I don't know. If you have any tips, I would really love them. If you have any suggestions, please comment below, comment on my social media, or message me personally. I would really love to hear from you guys. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really do hope this was helpful. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.